Well, to Ripcaster, my name's John Nelson. We're a hi-fi dealer based between Reading and Oxford in the UK. Since I started Ripcaster in the early 2000s, there have always been three key components to our business. There's been music playback, and we started with things like Logitech Squeezebox or Slim Devices Squeezebox. We now sell a whole range of audio playback devices that you can see on our website at ripcaster.co.uk. We also offered and continue to offer CD conversion, where we'll take your music collection, we'll digitise it to make it available to be played on a digital audio system. And from the early days, we've also supplied things like QNAP NASes and now more latterly things like Melco NASes to store your audio collection. Today's video is not going to be about hi-fi. It's going to be a full geek fest. So if you're looking to watch a video about hi-fi, this video isn't for you. Today we're going to be going full geek mode, and we're going to be talking about recovering data off a QNAP NAS. There are tools available for this that make it easy in this, but the approach we're going to take is using freely available software to recover data off these. Now, we also offer this as a service, so if you do have a failed QNAP NAS, you've got some content, your precious photos, your precious music, and you want it recovering onto another device, we can generally do that as part of the service. So this video is going to be all about recovering data off a failed QNAP NAS drive. Now, often what you may find is the actual enclosure has failed, but the actual hard drives are fine. And so this is a 2-bay unit. It's got 2 drives. If you bought it from us, we will generally have configured it as a mirror, a RAID 1 mirror, so data is simultaneously written to both physical disks. And so we just need one good disk, and we'll be able to recover your data. The process that we're about to go through is applicable to single drive QNAPs and also to 4-bay QNAPs that are configured in a RAID 5. Some of the techniques are slightly different, and you'll need to actually connect at least 3 drives in a RAID 5 configuration to recover the data. We are talking about data recovery only. If you've been unfortunately a victim of some of the ransomware, deadbolt, etc. that's encrypted the data, this isn't going to help. It might help you in terms of recovering deleted files that weren't encrypted, but in terms of actually salvaging anything that's been encrypted by ransomware, unfortunately this video isn't going to help. We're going to be using freely available tools. We're going to be using a Windows machine as our base operating system, but it's equally applicable to certainly Intel based Macs. I'm not quite sure about M1 Macs. I suspect that will also work, and also Linux machines. These QNAPs are basically embedded Linux machines, so we ourselves are going to use a virtual machine running under Oracle VirtualBox to mount the drives and to read the data off them. So what do we need to be able to achieve this? So I've got a Windows PC here with Windows 10, Windows 11 will work. I've got the physical device which has failed. I've got a suitable USB drive that I'm going to recover the data onto, and I've also got a USB Caddy which will allow me to mount the drives and read them directly. So this is connected to our PC, and we're going to put the raw drive in here and then access it. Like I say, we do offer this as a service if you were to purchase additional hardware and you want data recovering off your previous device. If you want to do it yourself, you can follow along with this video. There is also some instructions on our website that have got the commands that I'll be using, and you can see that on the link on the screen now. One other thing to mention, the format of the volume that we're recovering is a static volume. Now QNAP, when you create the device, gives you I think 3 choices of a static volume or ones which are dynamically allocated, etc. We're just focusing on those static volumes. Those are the easiest ones to recover. You probably can recover the dynamically allocated ones. If people know how to do that, then put that in the comments below. Okay, so let's get started. We'll switch to a full screen view of the PC desktop, and I'll just talk as we go through it. But the basic steps are, we're going to install VirtualBox. We're going to then within VirtualBox we're going to install a Linux virtual machine, and then we're going to mount the physical drives from the QNAP within the virtual machine, read those drives, and then copy the data off the drives onto additional storage, the USB disk in this instance. Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to do is physically remove the drives out of the QNAP. They are in an order, and so what I typically do is I take the drive out, and the first thing is to actually put a drive label on so that I know if they are going to go back in, I know which drive has come out of which. So I've got some labels here, take the drive out and just apply our labels so that we know which drive is which. These are just held in with some screws, so we'll just remove the caddy off the drive. I suspect in this instance that both drives are in good condition, and it's the actual enclosure which has failed, possibly due to a power failure, or indeed there is a known problem with some of the atom-based QNAP enclosures which cause them to fail. If you search YouTube, there are some fixes for that. So we're going to take one of these drives. These are a mirror of each other, so we know, assuming the drive is in good condition, we should be able to read all the data off this drive. So now that we've got the physical drive, we'll put this on one side. We'll focus on installing the software necessary before we're able to read the data off this drive. Okay, so I've got my Windows 10 desktop set up here, and the first thing we're going to do is to download VirtualBox and Ubuntu, which are the two products that we're going to use to do the recovery. The steps for this are on our website, so if you go to ripcaster.co.uk, data recovery from failed QNAP Raid 1, which is in our news section, I'll put the link below, but the basic steps that I'm going to use are in there. So VirtualBox is at virtualbox.org, and we basically want to download the latest version. There are hosts available for Windows, Mac, etc. We're on Windows, so we'll obviously check the first one here, and it will download the VirtualBox host. So VirtualBox is a virtual machine environment. It's free, provided by Oracle, and we're going to host a Linux environment within that virtual machine. I'm going to run the installer. It wants administrative permission, so yeah. Preparing to install. Basically just accept all the defaults. It does alter the networking interface, so we should be good. I'll probably speed some of this up so that it, rather than doing this in real time. Just accept the defaults. Okay, so there we go. So it's done the initial install, and we have now got the standard VirtualBox manager interface here. Okay, so that's VirtualBox done, so that's one down. Next we want to install Ubuntu, so I'm going to go to ubuntu.com, download desktop, and we want to install Ubuntu, the long-term support LTS version, which at the time of recording is 22.04.2. so again, I'm going to download that, and that is starting. It's I think it's going to take 11 minutes, so we'll pause the video until that has completed. Okay, so we have downloaded VirtualBox, we've downloaded Ubuntu long-term support, we've installed VirtualBox, and if I look in my downloads folder, you'll see that we've got the Ubuntu desktop here. So okay, so I've got my Ubuntu downloaded now. I've opened up Oracle VirtualBox Manager, and I'm going to create a new virtual machine. And I'm just going to call this Ubuntu 22 LTS. You call it what you like, and just accept the defaults here. So it's a Linux, it's a 64-bit. Next. This allows us to specify the amount of base memory and the number of CPUs. So I'm going to give it 2 CPUs, and I'm going to give it, I've got 16 gigs on this machine, so let's give it 4 gigs of RAM. It doesn't really need that much. It's not a time critical process. So next. Now the default size of the virtual drive that it creates might be a little small. So 25 gigs, I'm just going to increase that to 35, just so that it gives us enough room for some utilities. We're not going to actually save the data onto this machine, and we can delete the machine after the job's completed. So I'm going to finish that. Okay, so that is our, as it were, virtual machine started. I'm now going to try and start that machine. So again, we'll probably cut this little bit out. It takes a little while for it to power up. Okay, so it's starting the virtual machine, and it's looking for some bootable media. So we're going to add. So clicked on other, and we're going to navigate to where we downloaded our ISO image for Ubuntu. So it's in my downloads. So I select the Ubuntu long-term support ISO image, and mount and retry the boot. And at this point it does allow us to launch Ubuntu. So we've now got a graphical interface, and we'll go through the normal installation process for Ubuntu. So I'm going to try or install Ubuntu. Again, these things take a little time, so we may speed up the process. Let's just resize this. Okay, so it comes up with the main install screen. We're going to actually install it. I want English. I'm going to install Ubuntu. And we are, the keyboard we happen to have is UK. If I can find it. It helps if I go UK English. UK English. I'm just going to resize this, and you can see these buttons. Continue. I want a normal, well, in fact we're going to go for a minimal install, just to reduce the amount of files that we need to install. So a minimal install, and I'm going to put a tick in download updates whilst we're installing Ubuntu, and I'm also going to say install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware. Again, this process, depending on the speed of your network connection and the speed of the actual machine that you're hosting this in, may take a few minutes or longer. So the install is going to erase the disk and install Ubuntu. Now, this is the disk within the virtual machine. It's not the disk within your computer. So we are going to erase the disk and install Ubuntu. Do I really want to do that to the virtual hard drive? Yes, continue. It knows what time zone we're in. Continue. And we're just going to call the, put in a name and a password. And away we go. Again, this will take some time. We will speed this up. Alright, so we're almost finished copying the files. It's going to install all the system, then it'll reboot the virtual machine and we should be good to go. Alright, so it's now doing, I think, some updates. Again, depending on the speed of your connection, that may or may not take some time. So it's finishing off the portion of the install now. Typically just go away, make a coffee and come back when this is all done. Okay, so the installation's complete now. It's asking us to restart, so this will restart the virtual machine. And we should see the virtual machine reboot now. Let's resize that. So this is our first boot of the guest operating system, Ubuntu, within VirtualBox. Okay, so it's ready to for me to sign in. Now, it's a scaled window within a window right now. One of the first things I'm going to do, just for the purpose of the video, is install something called Guest Additions. This will give us a better screen, a better scaled screen. This step isn't actually necessary if you are just using it for yourself, and you can read the screen perfectly. But if you want to use more screen real estate, then you want to go up to here and machine and insert guest additions CD image, and that then gives us this virtual CD within the virtual machine. And what I want to do is to go into activities now and type terminal, and I want to launch terminal. Okay, so most of the rest of what we're going to do here is actually all going to be at the terminal, but to install the guest additions, I want to do ls and John, okay, slash VBox. So this is where it puts guest additions. I'm not going to do that right now, so let's just carry on with the guest additions. GA is S_7.0.6. Okay, and what we want to do is do sudo shell, and then we want to pass it the path to the VBox Linux editions.run. So VBox Linux editions.run. Helps if you write sudo. And this will install various drivers within the Linux environment that make it play nicely with VirtualBox. Alright, so it's finished doing that. We now need to do a restart, so I'm going to go up here and power off and restart. And when it reboots the virtual machine, we should find that the screen is scales to the size of the available window, which should make it easier for you and for me. So we'll just wait for the machine to reboot. Okay, so the machine's ready now. Log in. And if I scale, I'm hoping that the desktop scales with the window. Indeed it does. All right, so let's skip that. Okay, this is just the basic starting Ubuntu, but here we are. We've finally got all the basic tools in place. So we've got VirtualBox installed. We've installed Ubuntu Linux as a virtual machine within VirtualBox, and we installed the guest editions just to give us a more real estate to work with. So the next step is to install some additional items that we need specifically for our task. So if I go again, activities, and search for terminal. I've just changed the font preferences, so I'm going to activities and terminal. Open the terminal. Okay, so we've got our terminal here. Hopefully that's easy enough for you to see. And the first thing we're going to do is install the Raid software. So we're going to do sudo apt install MDADM. Put in our password. Yes, we do. Again, this takes a few minutes, and this is the program which is used for assembling RAID, software RAID, which is what's used on the QNAP drives. This method will probably work for other similar drive manufacturers like Buffalo and Synology, etc. They all use a similar process. Okay, so that's one done. We've now got to install Logical Device Manager, and this is LVM2, Logical Volume Manager, version 2. Yep. Again, this takes a few moments. Okay, so that's completed. A useful tool for looking at drives in a graphical environment that we'll come to is called Gparted, so we'll install that as well. All right, so that is the necessary software needed. Now, if I actually just run Gparted right now, I've got nothing plugged in. It's asking for our password, and it can see here the single drive installed. If I go up here, there's just one drive, and this is the virtual drive that it's created that's running Ubuntu. All right, so now we've got all the software components in place. What I'm going to do now is switch on the Caddy, and you can actually hear the drive spin up maybe. And as it does that, okay, you hear the chime from Windows saying that it's seen the disk. So that is, there are multiple partitions, so Windows is discovering multiple partitions on there, but obviously it can't read them under Windows. All right, so I'm going to try and connect the USB drive virtually to the VirtualBox. So I go into the devices menu, I go to USB, and in here you've got a whole list of available USB drives, and I am going to go, I know that ours is presented here as this AS Media device. It will be different likely on your Caddy that you're using, but basically you just want to be able to enable or connect to the one, and it should then mount the drive. Okay, so it's telling me we can't connect to the device, so maybe we need to check something else. Let's go into USB settings. Okay, so I suspect we might need to go to USB 3 for this particular caddy. So let me cancel this. I'm going to shut down the machine because I need to do that. Power off. Just depends on the version of your system as to what USB settings are supported. So I'm going to go into, so I've highlighted the virtual machine that we're using. I'm going into settings, I'm going to USB, and I'm going to select USB 3 and click OK. And then I'm going to restart the machine. All right, so log in. All right, so we're back to where we were. Let's go activities and terminal. All right, so we're back at our terminal. Let's give it a bigger profile picture. There you go. All right, so let's go back. Devices, USB, and okay, success. So now, if I look at devices and USB, we've got a tick which shows that it's connected to this virtual machine. Now if I run Gparted, put my password in. So now we've got the original drive that we saw before, 35 gigs, and now it's got this additional one, SDB, with, in this instance, 1.82 terabytes. So that's a 2 terabyte drive that we're going to recover. Now what we want to do, if you look, you see there are multiple partitions on this drive, but it's this one that we're interested in, the 1.8 to 1 terabyte with which has got our data. So let's close Gparted again. And again, back at the command line, we're going to run sudo ADM. So this is going to use the RAID manager to check the any drives it can find with the RAID. And again, we saw this is the drive here. It's labeled 1. So that gets us that information. So next, let's just have a look at any block devices connected. So LSBLK. And here you can see, again, these are all part of the internal file systems, the SDA, which is the one that's running the operating system, and then SDB here. And again, we can see SDB, sorry, here we go, it's this partition here, SDB3, and it's on this device MD124. Okay, so next, well, let's just have a little look at the status of the RAID arrays. So I'm going to type out proc/mdstat, and again it's telling us here what the different personalities of the RAID arrays are on this unit. And again, look at the number of blocks. You can see that this is the one, SDB3, and that's the one with the most blocks in. I use the biggest one, the 1.8 terabytes. All right, so now let's look at physical volumes with PV display. Okay, so there's nothing listed there. So what I'm going to do now is use the, I'm going to use the command MDADM /run /dev/SDB3, I think is what I need to do. Nope. MD124 even. Yeah. So I'm going to try and, okay, so it now says it's running that array. So MD124 is, we got that from here. Now if I'm going to run that PV display, it now shows that we've got a physical volume. We do get some error message here, but we have some warnings that we can ignore that, so that's no problem. And we've got a physical volume of /dev MD124, and then there's a virtual group name of VG288. Okay. So now let's have a look at that. So do VG display VG288. So we're going to look at this virtual group here as dictated by that name there. All right, so it's found the actual device. It's got the right size, and its format is LVM2, which is one of the formats that we saw previously. All right, so now let's do sudo lv display to display the logical volumes. And again, it's got the actual full path of this volume, the volume group name, and actually here, I think this is actually the name of the host that created it, the QNAP NAS name, which is takes us back there. So now what we want to do to actually be able to access that, we want to make it active. And what we're going to use is this full path here. So it's this device here, /dev /vg288/lv1 that we need to make active. Now when we do this, on this particular version of Linux, Ubuntu, it will automatically mount it, and we'll see in this side panel that the actual drive becomes available. So sudo lv change, so change the logical volumes, and then we put in the dev VG288/lv1. So we're using this volume path device there. And when we did that, it gives a little warning, but you also notice up here it has added a file system, mounted a file system automatically in the dock at the side here. Now, if that doesn't happen automatically, then you'll have to manually mount it. And if you look at it manually ourselves, then what we would do is something like this: sudo make directory /mount/lv1, and then we would mount the volume using sudo mount -t ext4 -o read only /dev /vg288/lv1 /mount/lv1, like so. All right, so that's mounted it separately. And if I can then look at that content, ls/mount/lv1, and here you should start to see some of the familiar names that you would recognize off your QNAP device. So we've got a downloads folder, we've got a homes folder. This particular NAS had a multimedia server called Minim server on it, but it also had multimedia and public and web, which are all common folders. So let's have a look in the multimedia folder. Multimedia, and there you go. We can see the content there of the actual drive with the data that we're trying to recover it. And so at this point we can copy it as we would any file system within the actual unit. So what I will do is, so that's how we manually mount it. What I'm going to do now is unmount that drive. So I use the command sudo umount/mount/lv1, and that has disconnected it. And when we did that, you will notice that the automatic volume reappeared. Okay, so we can see our data volume now on the, we can see our data volume here on the side. If I open that, I can see all the folders that we could see in the terminal window here. So if I go into multimedia, we should see these same files become available that we can recognize there. All right, so it might be slightly more comfortable for you using the graphical interface. You can obviously do all the copies, etc. So if I go back up here, I'm going to do a right click on multimedia and just do properties. This is going to tell me how much data is actually in that multimedia. So this is, so it's got 338 gigs of data. So I can right click and I can copy and I can move that to various other places, whether it be on a network hard drive, or in this instance, I'm going to plug a USB drive into my computer. All right, so that's plugged it into the computer and we should see that being identified. Okay, there. So that's connected to the Windows computer. We can't see it yet in the Linux computer, so we need to go into the virtual machine devices up here, into USB, and here we have it. That's the USB external drive, so I'll click that. And the virtual machine should then see it. Okay, there it is. So it's seen the drive there. And so I'm going to right click on multimedia. I'm going to do copy. I'm going to go to the external drive and I am going to paste it in here. Like so. So in fact, there's already a folder on here, multimedia, and I'm going to say I'm going to merge it in this instance. But ideally you want a clean drive to do this. Just making sure you want to do it. Okay, now sometimes when you are copying from the recovered Linux machine, you'll get some errors, and they are typically hidden files. If you'll see here, it's got a dot and then an @ and these are typically private files or deleted files which are still present on the volume. When we talked about recovery from ransomware, etc., these files could possibly give you a route to recovering some data if you wanted to copy them. And you just need to change the permissions on the drive to get them to copy. And as you can see, that copy is now in progress. So up here we've got a little pie chart, and if I click on there, it will tell us how long that's going to take. So it's just a case of leaving it to complete the task. If we look in this multimedia folder, okay, you can see that it's starting to do the copy now from the drive. I hope you found that useful. How to copy data off a working drive out of a QNAP NAS and recover the data, in this instance to a USB drive, but we could equally have copied it onto a new QNAP or a new Melco or whatever that happens to be. If you find it easier working off a web page, then check the link below for the list of commands that we actually used during this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like these kind of more technical videos, please like and subscribe. And if there's any topics you'd like us to discuss or cover, let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.